So there's a few things we can start assuming or figuring out based on what kind of polynomial we have of how to graph it. So first let's look at functions of degree 2. Degree 2. So something with an x squared. You know, there might be more to it, but the x squared is the highest degree, or highest coefficient, meaning it's the degree. So if the leading coefficient is positive, so if the leading coefficient is positive, let me write out the word positive, then we know that the graph is going to be something like this, because we know it's going to be a parabola and it's going to open up. If the leading coefficient is negative, then we know it is going to open down. Okay. Now it doesn't necessarily have to start at 0, 0. Let me draw another one up here. It could start something like here. Or for the positive leading coefficient, it could start right here. So it doesn't matter where the x-intercept is. It doesn't need to be at 0. Basically, if it's positive, it opens up. Leading coefficient is negative, it opens down, which we've already talked about when we have done graphing. So now let's look at if we have instead of function of degree 2, functions of degree 3. So something starting with an x cubed and then more is going on. So functions of degree 3, if the leading coefficient, if it is positive, then I know that the graph starts down low and it's going to increase, and then at some point it's probably going to go back down and then back up again. So that would be something cubed, x cubed, positive. Now if it's negative, then it starts up on top, comes down, probably increases and decreases. Basically, notice it has kind of 3 parts: decreasing, then it's increasing, then it's decreasing. Hence the cubed. Versus the squared, it's, like in this case, increasing then decreasing. It has 2 parts to it, or it changes once. Okay, so that's kind of a good thing to keep in mind as we add another part to this. You know, let me throw up another example before we move on. Let's say we have a graph that looks like this. Okay, now that looks a little different than the last ones I did, but notice it comes down. You know, whether it does it increase, decreasing or not, it's starting up high, going down low. So I know that this is a function of degree 3, and that the leading coefficient, a little abbreviating here, would have to be which one? What do you think? Should be negative, because look at how it starts up top and decreases, ends going down. So the leading coefficient is negative. Or how about this? I know that the degree would have to be 2. I mean, it looks like a parabola. And that the leading coefficient would have to be positive because it opens up. Okay, now let's add to this. Let's talk about the x-intercepts. X-intercepts of a polynomial. So x-intercepts of a polynomial. Okay. So when a polynomial is set to 0, when a polynomial is set to 0, x is found are the x-intercepts of the graph. The x-intercepts of the graph. And if you think about it, that makes sense because we're setting the polynomial equal to 0. It's like we're setting y equal to 0. So let's say, for example, I have f of x equals x squared minus 2x minus 3. Okay, now that's just like y. Remember, f of x is just like y. It's our output. Y equals x squared minus 2x minus 3. So when we set y equal to 0, we're really finding our x-intercepts, right? Just like back to basic graphing. How do you find an x-intercept? Set y equal to 0. So now what we can do here, like we've been doing, if we can factor this, we can solve for x. So it's going to have to be 3 and 1 minus 3 and a plus 1. So that means x minus 3 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. Add 3 to both sides. X equals 3. Subtract 1 from both sides. X equals negative 1. So that means for my graph, my x-intercepts are 3 and negative 1. So let's try to sketch this. Positive 3, negative 1. So the other thing I can figure out from this graph, what we just talked about, this is degree 2. It's an x squared, so I know it's going to have to be a parabola. So now I think, is it going to open up or down? Well, it's a positive leading coefficient. Okay, so it's degree 2. Leading coefficient is positive, so I know it's going to open up. Now, for, at this point, I'm just going to kind of sketch it in here. I don't know exactly what this is going to look like, but let me make that in blue. But let's just kind of sketch it in. I know, though, it's going to look something like this. It's going to go through negative 1 and positive 3, and it's going to open up. It might go down a little lower than that, but that's pretty much what it's going to look like. I mean, I could really quickly, you guys should kind of know this, if you plug in 0, what is y when I plug in 0 squared minus 2 times 0 minus 3? Y would be negative 3 is my y-intercept. So you wouldn't necessarily have to do that, though. But I know my y-intercept. I should be able to figure that out to be negative 3. So combining the fact that, if it would open up or down, or if it was a cubed, does it start up at the top and go down? If it's negative leading coefficient, start at the bottom and go up. If it's positive, we could start to kind of sketch our graphs without the use of a graphing calculator.